Hello, and welcome to my Radiant Dawn level design review. Having just played through the entirety of Radiant Dawn, I'm very excited to talk about the game's level design, as it's one of my favorite aspects of the game, and it's one of the reasons that Radiant Dawn is possibly my favorite Fire Emblem game. One thing to note before I get started, I did not record all of the chapter title screens throughout my playthrough, and I don't want to look around for other people's recordings of those title screens. So I've just grabbed an empty version of the title screen and overlaid my own text onto it for each chapter, which of course means that it won't have the same font that the game uses. I know it's not perfect, but I'm confident that everyone watching will forgive my egregious affront to aesthetics. And with that out of the way, on to the reviews. Fighting bandits or brigands in the initial chapter is a very common trope for Fire Emblem games. Looking at just those released in the West, this occurs in Blazing Sword, Sacred Stones, Radiant Dawn, and Awakening. Path of Radiance also has bandits in the first couple chapters, but has a friendly bout with Boyd and Grail in the prologue before that. Also, technically the enemies in Sacred Stones are actually members of the Grado Imperial Army, not just bandits. But it would be easy to miss this distinction as the enemies are all axe-wielding fighters. From a narrative standpoint, this may seem like a lazy way to give the player someone to fight before introducing the primary antagonist. But from a gameplay standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Main lords are by and large sword users, and that's true in all of the games that I mentioned. Fighting with weapon triangle advantage against classes and weapons that have generally poor accuracy to begin with gives new players a good first impression of the main character, makes them feel intelligent and powerful for exploiting what is in reality an unavoidable tactical advantage, and gives them more margin for error. However, Radiant Dawn is a bit different. Although the main lord is a sword user, he's not the lord for this part of the game. Instead, we have Micaiah, who does not have weapon triangle advantage against axe users. Edward is of course the one who benefits from fighting all the axe users, so there's still validity to this design choice. And given the overall poor performance of mages in Radiant Dawn, it's difficult to imagine a prologue that showcases Micaiah's combat in a positive light. Micaiah and Leonardo do get some help from the chapter's linear layout. The enemies are spaced fairly far apart, and the alley is narrow, including 2 choke points which allow a more methodical player to make ranged attacks across the obstacles with Micaiah and Leonardo, while screening them with Edward. In hard mode, of course, the chapter's design doesn't make as much sense, given the lack of a weapon triangle. But that's a systems design issue, not a level design issue, so I don't fault the chapter itself. Edward's ability to get himself killed thanks to wrath crits is also something that probably only shows up in hard mode, thanks to the combination of the loss of the weapon triangle and stronger enemies. I doubt this is something new players run into as such, so as long as that's the case, I'd say this is actually a good thing. Veteran players need something to worry about in such a straightforward chapter. Overall, the chapter is nothing special, especially not for a veteran player. But given the constraints on the design of prologue chapters, I think they did a pretty good job, and I think it's a much more interesting chapter to play than most prologues for a veteran. One thing that seems very out of left field is Leonardo's Draco Shield. I have no explanation for why it exists.